This is Celebrate at 19 Hawthorne, the podcast, where we explore the creative process of planning your wedding. So welcome to the storage closet at 19 Hawthorne that we have converted into a podcast studio.
Yep.
We're here, your host, Chad Hughes.
April Spencer.
19 Hawthorne and
Spencer Sugar Shop.
And we are going to interview all of our friends. And we're going to talk about what inspires them, talk about industry standards, what advice they want to give to people who are planning a wedding, some things that they've lived through. No horror stories, but
just
fun
helping
stories.
couples. Yeah, helping couples figure out how to plan their wedding to make it a less stressful day, an experience, all in all, and together.
And first, we're going to learn a little bit about me and April because we're interesting, so we think. And I think so, April. So first of all, tell us, April, a little bit about yourself and where you come from, why you started this, why you're here, all the good things.
So Chad is my bestie. We've known each other since high school. And it was really funny because we were both theater kids. And so he actually got to go to art school. I wanted to go to art school. It didn't pan out that way for me. So it's just funny that 15 years later, we circled back and somehow both landed in the wedding industry. And now we get to see each other a couple weekends a month as we try to make people's day go a little bit smoother. So it was a really crazy circle back.
And in between those weddings, we approximately talk on the phone 17 hours a week about
On
all
average,
the other things.
On all the other
and
things
live
we're
around
trying
the
to
corner
do.
from each other.
So I think it's just cool that our comeback to this is our goal is just to make the wedding experience for our couples go a lot smoother. And we have friends that are the best in the industry and are really, really good at their jobs. So to get them here and to give advice straight from the professionals is going to be our goal in this and how we make it a lot easier for our couples to like take a breath. Because let's be honest, weddings from 20 years ago are
Stressful.
Way different than they used to be, right? Like grandma and moms can't necessarily help you with the whole process anymore because things have changed a lot. So that's what we're going to dive into and figure out.
And if you're wondering what play we met doing, it was Grease. And April was Frenchie, and she did dye her hair pink.
Bright pink, yes.
Bright pink. Mm-hmm. And I was Eugene the nerd, and I wore a yellow suit, and I just looked like Timothy Chalamet on the Oscars. When I saw that suit, I was like inspired
Shiny.
by my Grease costume.
Love it. Yep.
I look like a big stick of butter. Speaking of butter,
Okay.
tell us a little bit about Spencer Sugar Shop.
So I started Spencer Sugar Shop 11 years ago. It was totally by fluke. I was a vet tech. I was a dog nurse for a long time. And then we had our first daughter, and I wanted to stay at home and raise her. And I wanted to make this really cool cake for her when it came to her first birthday because we did not have the money to afford a $250 birthday cake. So we decided that, I decided that I would make it. So I jumped on YouTube and learned how to do it. Everything I know and everything I learned from YouTube. So I made her birthday cake, and I have a whole bunch of nieces and nephews. So I made their birthday cakes, and then all of a sudden people started to order off of Facebook. So, it was just crazy, and it all led from there. So I started out with regular cakes, and then once I got my Cake Safe, shout out to them. It's a really cool box that your cake goes into so your cake doesn't fall over. Once I got a couple of those, I started to do wedding cakes.
Let's talk about this Cake Safe for a minute. Like, I'm envisioning you carrying this giant, heavy safe to your car, but that's not it.
It's not it. It's made out of like plexiglass and things like that, and you put your cake in it, and then a steel rod goes down the middle of your cake. So I can get rear-ended. I can technically drop it. Knock on wood, I haven't. But lots of things can happen, and your cake is going to be in absolute perfect condition still when it arrives at the venue.
So much fun.
So it makes it,
I
makes
always
it a
think
lot
about
easier.
the cakes coming to 19 Hawthorne, going over the railroad tracks further down the road.
Bump.
And I'm like, oh, I hope they have a cake safe.
So
Scary.
if you don't have a cake safe and you are a wedding cake person, you should definitely get one for sure. So what about you? How did you come to be in the wedding business?
And let's go back in time. So I have actually been in the wedding industry for almost 20 years. Happy anniversary to me. I started in school, in college. In high school, I was always the yearbook kid taking the pictures for the yearbook. And then I was like, I want to be a photographer when I grow up. So went to art school, studied advertising and graphic design, but my minor was photography. So on the weekends, I was the cool kid that never partied in college, and I would come home and I would shoot a wedding every single weekend of my existence because I was bougie and I wanted to live in Bexley and then in Dublin. I couldn't be just, a normal kid that lived in the holler dorms down the street. Like, I wanted to be cool and have my own apartment.
Yeah.
So I started shooting weddings, and I shot weddings for a very long time, 17 years.
Yeah.
I shot weddings all over the state, a couple other states. I've never shot internationally from a wedding standpoint, but the option's always open. But I don't shoot anymore. And then worked at the hospital full time as well for 13 years. So I was in marketing and I did all their event planning and really hit the event track and have always kind of been in the event track with the photography and the events. So a natural progression as I decided that healthcare wasn't much fun during COVID.
Yeah.
Because not many people were getting together at that time and having events or wanting their picture taken behind a mask. I decided to leave, and I went and ran the fairgrounds for just a little short time. And then the owners of 19 Hawthorne were building the property. They approached me and they were like, hey, we're building this wedding venue. We need it branded. We need a logo. We need a website. Like, can you help us with that? And I was like, sure. I'm sitting at home doing nothing because it's COVID times, making TikTok videos. And did that, presented them with everything. And then they were like, hey, I think we need you, which is really funny because about 15 years before that, I had approached them, them being my neighbors, the owners, about potentially like building my own wedding venue if they ever had property or saw anything or an empty building. Like, hey, let me know. Well, here we are. We're now setting in it. So that is kind of my weird backstory about events and how I got started. And I started shooting in 2006. I rounded up a whole bunch of my friends and we went and took their senior pictures, like all Abercrombie and Fitch-esque, and had white t-shirts and jeans.
Two of those were my sister-in-laws.
And rolled up sleeves. It was great. And then shot my first wedding that fall and have been in the wedding industry ever since. I think with the 19 Hawthorne's wedding now, I'm getting close to 475 weddings.
Wow.
Which I feel like is some kind of record.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, and let's give the owners of 19 Hawthorne some cred because not only did they call you in for help, but then you also gave them a list of people to contact.
I did.
And they pulled me in, which was really cool because I was like, they wanted, to see like about the kitchen and things. So I think that's really something that they have over a lot of other venues is that they reached out to actual vendors that had been in the wedding industry already to ask them like, hey, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about these colors and this setup and things like that? So I think that's why so many of us vendors really like 19 Hawthorne as well, because we got to kind of, we made suggestions. They asked questions, we made suggestions, and they actually they really listened.
Yeah, and a lot of your ideas and those other vendors' ideas are here in the building. Like our giant kitchen is because somebody said we need a giant kitchen to lay out 450 salad plates.
Right.
So a lot of those suggestions are here, and we use them every day. But that's kind of how I got into this strange world. Planning big events and taking pictures, and I call this photography retirement. I don't know that this is retirement from photography because I think I work harder now than I did
Definitely.
then. But I used to just sit in front of a computer a lot and edit pictures all day. Yay.
So now we know how you became the manager of 19 Hawthorne and with them reaching out for the logo and stuff. So, like, how do you use your art degree now that you do these events?
Art school.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to art school. It was an adventure, and how I use it daily is interesting because it's a lot of things that you don't think you would
Yeah.
use every day. So we had to take color theory classes. We had to take classes about lighting and teapots and chairs and all kinds of crazy things that you would never think of having to pay thousands and thousands of dollars for.
Yeah.
But shout out to CCAD because it is an awesome school and I learned a ton.
Yeah.
And I also had kind of 3 majors, which helped make me more well-rounded because
Yeah.
I was learning the marketing and advertising end of things, but then I have a minor in copywriting and in photo, and with that, I learned kind of about 4 different industries, which
Yeah.
was interesting. But I think that it's so funny because it's like you go to college to learn how to get a job. Well, I had a job in college and I worked for the president and the vice president of the university. And that's when I think I really got hooked on event planning
Yeah.
and how to make events come alive and what people get excited about. And one of those things that we did was we planned a fashion show for
Yeah.
the girls and the guys that were in the fashion part of CCAD. They would plan a fashion show every year. So one of the big things that we had to learn was, getting people excited, creating a cool event space, teaching them how to rock the runway, do the walk, all the things. And that really kind of opened up this avenue of like, I enjoy events. Like
Yeah.
this is fun. Not only were we raising thousands of dollars for a good cause, which was the scholarship fund, but like to see people actually having fun and realizing like, oh, I can make this a job
Yeah.
was interesting. So then that led to the hospital where I, did it for years. I planned Journey at Lima Memorial for years, which was my favorite. Every year was kind of a new theme. We got to adapt it. I was shooting on the weekends, weddings. So like life was a party, even though I was working really, really hard.
Right.
But the party part, I always enjoyed. I enjoyed watching people have fun and celebrating. And, it was different from obviously working in the hospital from a healthcare standpoint where
Right.
people are dealing with lots of emotions and, family members and things. But the fun part was always something I enjoyed. And I've always been the type of person where I enjoyed weird things. Like I have weird interests, and it was always fun to pull my interest into that event. So like I had a space period where I was really into space. It's kind of like Picasso's blue period. So like I made all my events have a space thing. And
Yeah.
we just did it, last year for one of our styled shoots. So
Right.
like all those things, it's nice to bring in parts of yourself and teach people things, but also they get excited. Everybody loves a good theme. I especially love a good theme. And
Chad is the theme master. Like everything has to have a theme.
it has to have a
has to.
must have a theme. And even with weddings, like even though you don't have a theme, like your wedding has a theme. It has
Right.
a vibe. A lot of people call it a vibe.
Vibe,
now.
yeah.
The young kids call it a vibe. What do you want your wedding vibe to be? So it's just fun to watch that, and
Yeah.
I like the process of bringing that, helping couples make that come to life.
Well, I didn't realize that you did like runway stuff, and that cracks me up because as soon as you started talking about that, Chad is like your hype person for the wedding day, like especially when it comes to the bride. Like he is your hype man. Like if he takes you out on to 19 Hawthorne's property, and he will be the one, like the photographer's taking pictures, and Chad will be like, "It's okay, throw your dress." Like he doesn't, you're not going to just sit there and have like boring photos. Like so that just cracked me up because I didn't realize that you did that. So and I'm just envisioning the first one. The first styled shoot we did here when we took that couple out there, and just you were throwing dresses and like doing all of the things, and that cracks me up.
I had to teach students how to walk a runway.
Yeah.
Like these are just normal art students who have no idea how to walk a runway or what even a runway is. So like, here's me, so fashionable, so chic, teaching all these people who could be the next top model. Like,
Yeah.
how to walk a runway. It was comical. There's video footage of it, and it may never be seen, but
I think
it's
you
great.
need to put it in here, you guys. I think that needs to be a snippet.
I couldn't even tell you where it is now, but it lives. It's out there.
It's somewhere.
So, April, along that line, tell us about how you stay inspired
Ugh.
in the industry and personally as well. Like, what inspires April? Because you're creating these beautiful cakes.
Yeah.
These amazing creations that could be in a museum. They're museum worthy, some of them. And where do you get your ideas? How do you come up with it? Where do you find inspiration personally, but then also for the sweets that you create?
I mean, I definitely didn't, I did want to go to art school. That is something that I really wanted to do, and it just didn't pan out. So once I started to make these cakes and realized that it was edible art, it was a really cool, avenue for me to get all that out that I had wanted to do and I had always wanted to do. I think my biggest thing is I like to see a trend and then put a spin on it. Because sometimes people, they see a trend and then they want to copy it exactly. And that's not necessarily what I see. Like, I see a trend and I'm like, but how can I make that more different so it's more me?
So you're an artist.
Sugar artist. Yeah.
Right.
Like, it's trying to find a trend, and then because you do, to stay relevant, to stay popular, to stay in the know, you have to find trends and you have to do them. But how do I make them me? How do I not just stick onto that and make it look like exactly like everybody else's? So then you get a best friend who really likes themes, and then it just works out. Like, one of my favorite cakes that we did was the one that lit up for that space theme. And that rice paper, those sales were very, very popular at the time. But how can I make that more me? How can I make that? So I decided to make it light up. Like, finding different ways to do the trends but make them your own is something that I really, really enjoy. Just anything, any kind of art, any kind of fun stuff that I think that's part of the reason why we're best friends is because, when we went to Vegas, we went to the wedding MBA, but we didn't necessarily get our inspiration from the wedding MBA.
It was a wild time.
It was a good...
And it wasn't because we were drinking.
No, I think we had 3 drinks the entire time we were there. But it was more just like walking around Vegas with your friend who was also like, those lights are really cool. It wasn't necessarily in all the shows that we went to. And it was just funny because I thought we were going to get most of our stuff from the actual like wedding MBA, like the convention that we had paid to go to. And I think even one time we were like, do we just skip the 3rd day and walk around Vegas?
And when you go to Vegas with April, you don't walk by a sweet shop.
No, you stop at every single one. Every single one.
Single sweet shop. We ate something. And it wasn't normally just one thing. I've never eaten so many sweets in my life.
He's like, so what are we getting from this one? I'm like, well, we're going to get 1, 2, 3, about 6. Like,
Yeah.
but we'll
Meals?
split them.
No meals?
Split them, no meals.
Just sweets.
Because how many times am I going to go to Vegas? I got 3 kids. Like, I'm not going to go to Vegas all the time with me and my besties. So yes, we stopped at every dessert place.
So speaking of those sweets,
Yeah.
what is obviously you make cupcakes and you make wedding cakes and you do lollipops and all the things that you create, but what's your favorite thing to create?
My favorite thing is honestly when it comes to my couples and they let me do whatever I want to do. Something now that I'm established and people trust me and they trust my work. The coolest thing is when a couple says, well, we have an idea, but we want you to surprise us. Like, I think that's something that really helps me stay super excited about it. So I have them send me 5 pictures of cakes that they love and 5 pictures of cakes that they hate. So I know what path to go down because my simple and elegant is going to be different than somebody else's simple and elegant, just like my crazy. Like, sometimes when a couple says crazy, they mean like a cool color on it. My crazy is like, how are we going to make it hang from the ceiling and like spin and, do all this kind of stuff. So that's something that's cool because when you give your people kind of creative freedom, I'm always going to I'm going to overcompensate and I'm going to go harder for you because I know how to replicate a cake and make it look exactly like that picture. But if you're going to put that pressure on me where like I have to come and bring it because this is my idea, it's always going to be 80 times better because now that's, that's my work. That's my vision. So I think that's really something that's really cool that helps me really like my job.
Yeah. Like I remember in Vegas, we both saw a whale. It was like this giant whale puppet thing in one of the shows, and we're like, where can we get a whale?
Do we make one?
Like it was a question we walked out of the show and we're both like, so that whale.
Yeah. Where do we get that?
And just know that in my Amazon cart, there is still a whale to this day. It's a whale of a tail.
It's a whale of a tail. So now that we know how I do things differently, how do you do things differently at 19 Hawthorne to make you guys stand out from everybody else?
Yeah, so I think there's so many venue options that people are looking at and looking for and what fits their budget and what doesn't. All those things factor into it. But I think our most important thing that we have here is our people and the setting. I mean, the building is a building. It's a big, giant space that you can squeeze, 150 people in or 600 people if necessary. So we can accommodate all sizes. But I think what really sets us apart is the setting that we're in. We're not in an urban setting. We're very much in what feels like sometimes taking care of a natural park.
Yeah.
We are surrounded by nature. We have the water features. We have the bridges. We have the amazing patios, which everybody loves, especially when it's nice outside. We have the big 15-foot fireplace.
Yeah.
So that is always a focal point. Whether you have to have your wedding inside if it does rain or you're planning to have your wedding in the off season inside. And then we have this giant amphitheater that's, 30 feet out from the building that can be your ceremony space. So a beautiful setting, not just a backdrop, not just a wall that you're getting married in front of, but a whole setting with a waterfall and steps and a pond behind it. And the birds are chirping and the eagles fly over, and the setting itself is what sets us apart, I think. And then obviously the property itself, there are so many places to take stunning pictures here. And when you get the perfect day, which knock on wood, we normally do. We have had some rainy, scary days, but when you do get the perfect day to go out on the property and get amazing pictures with your photographer and your videographers, so you have those moments with your significant other that you can hang on your wall and remember, your special day, I think is what really sets us apart.
So for people to understand this property, I think we have to talk about what this property used to be.
100%. So the property itself was a golf course. And it was not just that, hence our name 19, which we'll get into that. But it was not just an 18-hole golf course. It was a 27-hole golf course. So it was a really big golf course. And from what I hear, even though I was not ever on it when it was a golf course, it was the premier golf course in the area. And if you go out and walk the grounds, like, it's stunning. Yeah. Not only is there water features, but there's a woods, and then there's flat places, and then there's a beautiful old barn and our beautiful tree-lined path. Like, every corner of the property has something magical about it. So the property itself was a golf course. Yeah. And our owners took the property, bought it, didn't know really what they were going to do with it, and decided, you know what, let's put a wedding venue right in the middle. Even though we're still up near the front, like, we're pretty
central location.
Central in the property itself. So, in 300 feet, you're in a whole different area and a whole different place and a whole different feeling than standing at the venue. And whether that's a woods or down in the river or wherever you want to get your pictures taken at any time of the year, there's always somewhere magical on the property. Even in, like, what I call ugly gray season, like, there's
still somewhere.
There's still something magical to the property just because it's so big and there's so much nature. So I really do think that's what kind of sets us apart, but then also our people. So we have full-time staff that's here during your wedding the whole time. So usually myself or an assistant to me, and then Aaron, our bar manager, and our bartenders who have been with us since the beginning are great. And we're here all day. So if you have an issue, if you need something, If your dress rips, I'll stitch it up for you. I have before.
Yes.
I'll take you out on the golf cart and get your good pictures.
Yep.
You know, Aaron will make you a mimosa cart to greet you in the morning. Like, those are the things that make us a little different from
Right.
some of the other local venues. So with our setting and our people, I really do think that's what makes us a little special.
For sure. And something that I can verify is that my mom used to manage 19 Hawthorne
Yeah,
back
so
when it was just Hawthorne.
Another weird
Yeah,
connection.
so she managed it for a couple of years. Unfortunately, at that time, the clubhouse and things were on the downswing. I actually got married at Hawthorne.
That's right.
I got
April
married at
is a
the
Hawthorne
original
bride.
Hawthorne. But I mean, it was a third of the size that it is. You know, I know some people had asked why they had demolished the clubhouse, and I can verify that it had to be. I had to get my dress on in the pro shop because the locker rooms that were downstairs were not in like proper working order at that point. But yeah, so my mom managed this place and helped take care of the grounds, and it was, I mean, it was stunning. It still is stunning, but it was I think that's what's hard for people until they get here and you load them up on the golf cart. It's like, it's hard to even fathom how many cool photo places there are around here because it was such a giant golf course.
Yeah, 240 acres
Yeah.
is really big.
Yeah, and
Really
like obviously, I will say my favorite spot is the cart path where like I want to live there. Like if I could have a hobbit hole there, I would live there for sure.
Same.
Every time I'm like, Chad, can we do something there? But there's just so many. I remember you taking me out on the golf cart when you first got the job and wanted to take me to all the different places and like show me like the eagle's nest and like all these crazy things that are all over here that like I had never got to experience. I was also the beer cart girl for a little bit, but you don't necessarily get to recognize those things when it is a golf course because I was doing a different job at that point.
Well,
So
and then the process of they let it go back to nature a little
Yeah.
bit. So it wasn't a perfectly manicured golf cart. So now it's like these like rolling hills of
Yeah.
like beautiful prairies and little thickets and tall grass.
right,
and
it's not all mowed.
wildflowers.
It's not all mowed
Yeah,
thin.
it's pretty. It's a magical place. Like it truly feels like working in a like national park sometimes because it is so big and it's a lot to mow.
So now
and
that
weed.
yeah, right.
But the name. Let's go back to the
Yeah,
name.
the name.
People always ask me what's up with the number.
Right.
Why do you guys have a 19? Well, in golf world, and this is me not knowing much about golf, non-athletic.
I grew up at a golf course. Yeah,
I did not. So the 19th hole was always kind of called the clubhouse.
Yep.
So when we were trying to come up with names, we wanted to obviously keep the Hawthorne name because it's so recognizable to the area, but we wanted to change it and make it a little different. So our owners, their family were like, what about like 19th hole, pays, homage to the golf course, but also is a little different, kind
Yeah.
of feels trendy and new. So that's where the 19 come from. It's the whole golf thing. If people ask, that's why I tell them.
it's there. It's there to stay.
It's there.
But I think that's cool. I think that's cool that they stuck with that and that they wanted to include that because it had been a golf course for so long before that. So that's cool.
And like there's also we have tucked in little small things throughout the building that are, a little nod to the golf course.
Yeah.
So still looking for a really good map of the original golf course. I have one. It's not great, and it doesn't have all 27 holes on it. It was like phase 1.
Yeah.
But as soon as I get that, we're hanging that puppy up somewhere because I can't wait to get that. That's the historian in me. Celebrate everything at 19 Hawthorne Wedding and Event Venue. Centrally located in the heart of Northwest Ohio, 19 Hawthorne is the place to welcome family and friends as you celebrate life's most important moments. Our mission is to create sophisticated luxury in a timeless, natural setting. Our desire is to drive the creative spirit forward, creating an environment that guests will remember for years to come. When you and the people you love celebrate with us, together we establish unforgettable memories. Create the perfect day of joy and celebration. Learn more at 19hawthorne.com. So tell us a little bit about, from a couple standpoint, like obviously we've talked about what makes 19 Hawthorne special. But what advice do you want to give to couples? What makes Spencer's Sugar Shop and your experience special that you give your couples? And what advice would you give to a couple looking to find a person to create the sweets for their wedding?
So something that's special that I offer to my couples that other people don't do is that I'm not just your wedding cake. I am your wedding cake and most of your desserts. So cupcakes, chocolate-covered pretzels, decorated cookies, lollipops. The list is very, very long. So something that I get to offer them is you get to work with one vendor instead of working with 8 different vendors. Also, venues, wedding planners, they greatly appreciate that because it cuts out a whole lot of the middle people that make things more difficult. So you have one person that you get to go to that takes care of almost everything. There are a few things that I don't do, and if I don't do them, you are more than welcome to go to an outside vendor for that. But knowing that all of your stuff is going to be cohesive. All the colors are going to be cohesive. The vibe is going to be cohesive for that day is something that is really nice. Something else, when it comes to hiring a baker, a lot of us around here and just in this general vicinity are home bakers, which is different than a storefront. But if you're going to hire a home baker, make sure that they have contracts. Make sure that they're professionals. I don't know how many times a year I get a Facebook message or an email from a distraught bride or a super sad soon-to-be mother-in-law that is like, my cousin or my friend's cousin's sister was going to do my daughter's wedding cake. Now she decided to move or that she doesn't want to do it anymore, or they booked a family vacation. And all of a sudden they don't have a person and it's a month before their wedding.
Panic attack.
And so that's something that I get to offer. We have contracts, you will sign a contract. There will be a deposit. It's a non-refundable deposit, but then you know that your day is safe. You have a dessert lady. And then the way that I like to do it is I like to wait for us to do our final numbers and our final invoice until 30 days prior to the wedding. That way all of your RSVPs are in. So we're not over ordering or under ordering. We wait until that moment so you can take a breath, not stress out, and do it once all your numbers are in. Because if I have my way, I want that dessert table to be clear at the end of the night. I don't want you to feel like you need to order 12 dozen extra just in case. So we like to wait until then for you to ease their minds, but to also make it so it's enjoyable. You're not going to be happy with me if you have 8 dozen desserts left at the end of the night. So that's something that we kind of strive for, definitely.
So something that we're going to talk about with a lot of our guests
Yeah.
on this podcast is timelines. And I think it's a big question for
Yes.
most bride and grooms.
Yes.
So you had mentioned your 30 days. Mm-hmm. Same thing for us. We meet with the brides and grooms 30 days out.
Yeah.
And why that 30-day mark? Because that is when your RCPs should be back.
Correct.
So you have final guest numbers, then magically everything kind of lines up in that last 30 days.
So when you're sending out your RSVP cards, do not put 30 days before the date. Put 6 weeks before the date because you are going to have to headhunt your people.
Correct.
You are going to have to headhunt people to find them, to make them turn in your RSVPs. And if you put it at that 4-week date, then we're all knocking on your door and you're like, well, cousin Susie and her 12 friends haven't, RSVP'd yet. Let me get back to you.
We don't care. We just need to know if they need a chair and a piece of cake.
Right. So make sure when you're doing your RSVPs, don't put 4 weeks. Put 5 or 6 weeks. Give yourself some grace time in there. But yeah, that 30-day mark is usually when all of us come a knocking.
Yeah. So something that 19 Hawthorne does at that 30-day mark, because we have some check-ins, but that's our actually only meeting that we have with our couples. So 60 days out is when their final wedding venue payment is due.
Okay.
That's also when we tell them if they can book the day before, schedule their rehearsal. We will not book an event within 60 days of your wedding day. So you can get that day booked and schedule things out if needed. But at that magic 30-day mark is when we have what we call our BEO meeting. And BEO stands for Banquet Event Order. And that is really just 75 questions about everything that we need to know for the wedding so we don't have to constantly bug the bride and groom, mom of the
On
bride.
that day. Yeah.
Everything from timeline to who your vendors are that we need to know about, your linen order, your layout, all that good stuff. So you walk out of that meeting either feeling panic stricken because you have a lot to do,
Right.
or like, oh, this all lives in one place now. I have, everybody knows everything. Here's my marching orders of what I need to get. And then it's so much fun to watch a bride and groom, their family, walk into that meeting, like
Panic induced.
and then walk out and be like, I feel so much better now.
Yeah.
And then they're ready for those last 30 days because there's a lot that happen in that last 30 days.
Well, I think something else that we can hit on with that too is like as a venue, you have a preferred vendors list. And if you have a preferred vendors list and your couple uses the people on that preferred vendors list, what does that do for you and for your couple? Why is that such a big deal?
Yeah. So most of those people that are on that vendors list, April being one, a lot of the people that you're going to meet on the podcast being others, what that is those are people that I have personally built relationships with over many, many years. They're friends. We have each other's cell phone numbers. We know way too much about each other because those are the people that you're going to work with every day. It's not necessarily every day for us. It's every weekend. But those are the people that we trust, that are good, that have worked here before specifically. That's how you get on our list. And just people that we know are going to provide a quality product or service for our couples. So at 19 Hawthorne, that list lives on our website.
Yeah.
And it gives people's contact information, how they prefer to be connected. And then they're also the people that we invite to our bridal show every year. We can only fit about 35 vendors in the building because people like to bring all their fun things to show it off. But those are the people that we really like to highlight. They're all local for the most part. And they provide our brides and grooms the most comfort and ease and stress-free experience when planning your day. So those are the people that we try to encourage you to hire and use. And that's important.
Because that's also going to make your job easier than as well.
So much easier. Because when I need to call the caterer and be like, listen, don't come up the driveway because the ceremony is happening at 3:30. You either got to get here before or get here after.
Right.
It's really nice to just pick up my phone and be like, call this person.
Right.
Done.
Or the BEO, like if we haven't had our meeting, you're like, April usually shows up an hour before the ceremony.
Correct. I already know your process.
Right, because we do the process together on such a regular basis.
It's super important. And I think anyone in the industry as you find people and find contacts, they're going to have preferred people that they enjoy working with.
Right.
And it's not just because, hey, we work together all the time. It's because they have seen their professionalism and seen how they treat their brides and grooms and the product and service they provide.
Right. Which in the end makes their day easier. Right. Because you don't have to call them and be like, hey, Aunt Susie dropped the wedding cake out back because she didn't have a cake.
Well, speaking of Aunt Susie, and this is a question we get all the time.
Yeah.
Is who cuts the wedding cake? See that face, everybody? That face right there. That's the face that I make when people are like, hey, Chad, can you cut the wedding cake? Mm-hmm. Okay, because I'm a professional not.
So, and that's a very important thing because you have so many servings out of a wedding cake. And if you have a professional there that knows how to do it, then you're going to get that many servings out of your wedding cake. Side note, wedding slices and then birthday slices are totally different ball games. So there are actually venues now that it's mandatory that either a venue staff or your caterer or even I have it on my price list where you can where I will actually return to the venue for a certain cost and cut that out and plate that for you and serve it out. So you do get those servings. That is required at some venues now. I know at 19 Hawthorne, that's a part of your package too, as an add-on is for you to do it. Because it does make a difference.
And there's also a lot of caterers that will do it too. Yeah. It's just something that you need to talk to your caterer about
beforehand.
Because I've seen the panic in people's faces. Like they don't bring the spoons or the forks
knives
or the
and
knives or
yeah.
the plates. And then they're like, okay, not only do I have to cut the cake, like we got to have something to serve it on. And
Right.
if the couple forgot to provide that, then it's coming up with that.
That is not in any cake service that I have ever seen. Anybody in my industry, we do not provide the plates and the forks for that. So I know that a lot of times in your catering package that is involved. But when you purchase from me, you are purchasing your cake and your desserts.
So the moral of the story is ask the questions
Correct.
to your vendors.
Also, your vendors, if they are professionals, like in our 3-month, I do a 3-month phone consultation, just a little check-in. Hey, but you get an email that says like, hey, you need to ask everybody about, do you have plates? Do you have stands? Do you have knives? Do you have all that stuff? Because I don't want you to freak out
and
that
that
month
is why
before.
you hire a professional.
Yes, and not Aunt Susie.
We love Aunt Susie. We just want her out on the dance floor.
She needs to be in the picture. She needs to be in the picture.
Go
She
do the
needs-
electric slide, Aunt Susie.
Right,
That's
don't-
what we want Aunt Susie to be doing.
Correct. Because that, I have been involved in weddings where they really wanted the family to do the cookies. And so what I do is I'm like, okay, if that's a family tradition, I sometimes let that slide. And I used to, but now I don't, because Aunt Susie was supposed to make 12 dozen chocolate chip cookies. So we incorporated that into my number of so if we needed 24 dozen things, perfect. Well, we're going to take that 12 dozen off of the number that I'm supposed to provide. Well, then Aunt Susie showed up with 2 dozen cookies.
Yeah, because Uncle Fred got hungry on the way here.
And all of a sudden, you're down 100 and something servings.
Really hungry.
Now half your guests don't get desserts. And the panic that the wedding planner had, I'm like, it's in my contract. I put in my contract that they were supplying these. That was the crazy thing, is the wedding was even an hour away. So it's not like I could run home real fast and see what I might have on the shelves or anything, or what could I make up real fast. So they were just down, and that nobody told the bride. And then the bride was like, half of our guests didn't get desserts. I'm like, well, it's because you didn't have half the desserts you were supposed to have.
These are the things that make a wedding venue manager
Lose his mind.
cry. Want to crawl in the corner.
Because Chad can't fix that for
And then
you.
people ask me, and I'm like, do you just want me to go in the back and whip up a cake?
It's
Okay.
there's nothing to do, because especially at that time when your cake person is dropping off and we figure out this catastrophe, you've got an hour before your ceremony. So that's a big, that's a big whoopsie. So like you said, we don't hate Aunt Susie. Just know Aunt Susie. If Aunt Susie shows up 3 hours late to Thanksgiving, Aunt Susie probably shouldn't make your cookies
And
for your wedding.
we're gonna move on from Aunt Susie because we want to see her doing the electric slide, and Aunt Susie's have been super helpful.
Super helpful.
But just be cautious.
So how
Word of advice.
we know how I stay inspired, which is by my couples and doing, just basically everything around us. How do you stay inspired as a venue manager? Because that is a lot different.
Yeah. So I think in general, what scares people when you talk to the general public is I'm doing 31 to 40 some weddings a year.
Yeah.
With a wedding every weekend. And I love everyone, and weddings
Sometimes
can
2 a weekend.
yeah, and weddings are all different, but every wedding is exactly the same secretly
Yeah.
from our standpoint.
Correct.
What we see is chairs, lots of chairs, lots of tables, linens, the things that we have to take care of so you don't have to worry. So it does get a little monotonous, but it also is fun because it's a new group of people every week. And when you talk about inspiration and constantly trying to stay inspired, I'm kind of the weird kid that loves all the things. I like to know about all things. I'm what you would call a lifelong learner of all things. So I'm really inspired by history and people and artwork. There comes the art person.
Chad is at the museum anytime he has a chance. He wants to go to all the different museums.
All the time. So I think it's finding inspiration in just different things. But the weirdest thing that I find inspiration in, which I think would surprise people, is I watch a lot of the fashion shows that are over in Milan and France and Italy and those big fashion shows, because they have people walking and they have the fashions and the dresses and the stuff, but the sets and the event that is these fashion shows is epic. And the process of, getting that many people in there, making them set there, getting all the models out. Like, it's impressive. And some of these fashion shows are stunning and their themes are amazing. And so that is a weird place where I find a lot of inspiration, that I think people would be like, huh, weird. That's
Chad
a
will call
strange
me the
one.
next day and be like, "Did you see that?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't. I didn't see that yet. Tell me about it."
And the Met Gala in New York is like my Oscars. Like, I have my own Met Gala party.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when the Vogue issue comes out, like, I had to start getting Vogue because I can't find it in Lima. Like, it's a big deal. It's
Yeah.
a big deal for people who live in this strange event world. Like,
Yeah.
there's a couple events that are like the events, and when they're creative and fun and different, like, it's so inspiring.
And those
to
set
see
the
those.
trends, though, too, right? Like, we know
100%.
that once you see those, that here where we're at in Ohio, we're going to see those in probably 2 years. Like,
Maybe 5.
Yeah,
Sometimes
it depends on what it is. But it trickles in slowly. So that gives us the opportunity to have like a sight forward into what we're going to be doing in a couple of years, which is really important to stay ahead.
It's like looking into a crystal ball, because
Yeah.
there'll be something from one of those events or something that we see and we're like, oh, it's coming.
Yeah.
It's going to come to the wedding industry, and it may not be here for a long time, but it's something that we will work in. Like, I know Mylar was really big a couple years ago. We
Yeah.
used it in a couple of our styled shoots, which we need to talk about styled shoots as well. But like, Mylar was super huge 5 years before that in the fashion show world.
Yeah.
So it's funny to watch how it slowly trickles into the wedding industry, because like, secretly the creative industry is not huge.
Right.
We all know each other or potentially went to school together.
Right.
So whatever your friend is doing over in Europe, designing shoes, or your friend that's designing Barbie things out in California,
Yeah.
like, you're seeing that work on their socials and you're getting inspired by all of that. Same way that brides do with weddings. Like, make it a collection process and make it fun. Make it
Yeah.
an experience. Don't be like, I want this because this is exactly what my sister or my cousin did.
Yeah.
Like, make it about you and
Right.
what you want and what you find fun. And like, there isn't anything that's too crazy or wild. There
Yeah.
are some things, confetti, not allowed. There are some things that are crazy.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the industry itself, like, we like different. People
Yes.
enjoy different. They like different experiences. They like the dessert bar to be different. They like flowers that are crazy and different. So push yourself to find some cool things. And if you're that person who just likes everything normal, okay, that's fine. Like,
Right.
we're good with that. Everyone's good with that. That means it's easy. But we also like a little bit of a creative challenge. And I think that's what makes it fun for people sitting in these seats that are trying to get you to work for you.
Right. And you had touched on styled shoots. So that's something that we're really proud of here, that we really like to do. Styled shoots, if you don't know, if you haven't been a part of one or you haven't seen one, that's where wedding vendors get to really showcase their creativity, because it's not another pink and blue. If you have a pink and blue wedding, that's totally fine. But we do like to have some different ideas and go a little bit crazier. It's a really fun opportunity for us to get published in publications, whether it be on different wedding sites or in, actual magazines. That gives us an opportunity for, like, as a venue, for you get to showcase your venue in a way that maybe couples hadn't seen before.
And April is the queen of getting published.
Thanks.
Because
I try.
everybody wants her amazing kinks.
I like styled shoots. I do a lot of styled shoots, and they're a lot of fun. So it's also so cool that I get to do styled shoots here with my bestie, like, because we get to be like a little bit more wild and
Like
crazy.
7 a.m. Hi. I came up with this idea because I had this dream.
Right.
Now we're going to do it. And we want a person in an astronaut costume and giant planets. And people are like, and April's like, yeah,
Okay, let's do this.
let's do it. So it is super fun. And styled shoots from a standpoint of a venue are a little different than each vendor, because
Yeah.
we're kind of seeing the overall, or the planner is seeing the overall picture, where the vendor gets to just focus and be really creative and kind of not so traditional
Right.
with what they bring to the table.
Right, like you get to see a light up cake, or you get to see, our space one that we did was one of my favorites. It always will be, but like you got to use those super cool Mylar balls, like all up and down. So we get to show are couples that, hey, this is something that we can pull off at your wedding, and it's not necessarily traditional, but it is really cool. And like we can make different things a statement piece, which is really fun.
I agree. So I have one question for you
Okay.
that I don't know that you're going to know the answer to, but I've always wanted to know.
Okay.
Where did the wedding cake trend come from?
So I didn't know this until Chad made me look it up.
I made her look it up.
Because I will be very honest, I had no idea why the traditions of wedding cakes happened.
Like, why? Why? Oh, there's so many traditions in weddings. Why wedding cake?
So the thing that I saw when I looked it up, I mean, that's the thing is that it's such a vast, like it's different in every continent. It's different in all of the different cultures and things like that. So the base that I found was that in the 17th century, they started having them, but there was always a bride. It wasn't actually a wedding cake. It was a bride cake and a groom cake. And then that kind of like fell off, and like the groom cake kind of fell off, and it was just like a wedding cake. And then, I mean, through different times and all of this stuff, like it's changed a million times about the purpose and the reason and all of that stuff. But I mean, it's just mainly about the unity of like bringing the couple together, which is really cool. So I think that's kind of why like the groom cake fell off, and it just came more of like a one cake kind of thing. But yeah, that's where wedding cakes originated from.
Well, I also think it goes back to some religions and the like breaking bread together as a group. Obviously, different cultures have different beliefs and different things, but I definitely think there's some of that in there, which I always think is interesting because it is the one thing that like kind of you share a meal together, you share a dessert together.
Yeah.
The meal part, people forget like what that means to be in a room with everyone that
with
you
who
love. Celebrating. That's the only time in your life that that's potentially going to happen. And that's why it's really cool about your wedding day.
So now that we're done, why did you start this podcast?
Why did I start the podcast? So to be truthful, I do think all of the people that we work with are such interesting, creative individuals all the time that we get to hear their stories and we get to experience the work that they do, but like the general public doesn't really know.
Yeah.
In a way, I think there's like this strange veil, kind of Wizard of Ozzy, that like people think that the wedding industry is like this strange thing, and once you do it once, you normally don't want to do it again.
It's a one and done situation, hopefully, right?
I think it's fun because there are so many creatives in this industry that need to be showcased, that need to be highlighted, that need to tell their stories, that need to just explain to people
why they love it,
how it works, timelines, just to make things easier, because it can be a little frightening and it's a lot of information.
Yeah.
You know, once they put that ring on the finger, there's a
boom,
lot.
Boom, boom, boom,
it's like a tidal wave coming your way. So get ready because it's fun. But I also think that if we can give somebody, you know, if you hear one thing on the podcast or another thing, or you make one note in your mental checklist of your wedding, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. So rapid fire. You going first?
Rapid
or am I
fire.
going first?
So every podcast, we're going to have a rapid fire. We have some questions, and guests can either do it about their wedding, if they're married, or if they want to get married. You know, what would they do? April is married, got married here, Hawthorne bride. So I'm going to do you first. You ready?
Okay.
So, dream wedding. We know where you got married.
We know where I got married. Yes.
Thanks for that. But if you were to get married again,
okay,
where?
In my kitchen. No.
She spends a lot of quality time there already.
No, I mean, to be honest, probably here would definitely be one of my top choices, just
I mean,
because I wouldn't have to do anything.
It does have all the feels.
Right,
too.
it does.
It's like anniversary. And
all those things.
Special.
Where would you get married? Your dream wedding location?
Well, believe it or not, it would not be here because I am here every weekend. Even though I love 19 Hawthorne, please use our services. I have always envisioned somewhere super fun where I could just take my whole family and we would spend like a whole weekend. Not just a day, like places where they could stay, hang out, maybe go to the beach. I don't know about beach. I don't know.
Okay, wedding colors.
I'm a traditionalist with this. Like I love a good red and a good blue. You know me, those are my favorite colors. And April says it always looks like a carnival.
But I'll take it. I can't really say anything because mine were like fall colors of like orange and yellow when I got married. If I would go back now, I would do black and white. So what's a fun, weird idea that you would include?
That one's rough for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the king of weird, fun ideas, so
Yeah.
all of my stuff would be super crazy. But I always love people's ideas with guest books.
Ooh.
Guest books are always so fun.
Yeah.
And I recently saw, I would probably not use this as my perfect one, but I saw it and it was cool.
Yeah.
They had their guests sign cards, like a 52 deck of cards, and then they put it up in their kitchen and framed it. And it's like this piece of artwork.
Cute.
In my case, one bride has done it here before. I would actually have people sign like postcards
Yeah.
and then hang those somewhere in my house, just because I think it's something cool that lives on beyond the wedding that you can like kind of hang out with your wedding pictures.
Yeah.
Because as a person who decorates walls all the time, like I'm always like, what can I put here?
Yeah.
Because I have no space on my walls in my house at all.
I would want a bounce house and a tattoo artist.
Of course, you would want a tattoo
You're welcome.
artist.
But a bounce house. That's
I've seen
cool.
the bounce house. It is fun for the kids, and I've even seen the bride
See,
get in
I'd
there.
want a no-kid wedding. I want bounce houses for the adults. I want tequila shots, bounce houses, and...
The bride in the bounce house is very entertaining.
So what is the most important part of your day in your opinion?
So one thing that I always try to do as a photographer, and I try to do it for my couples here, is like there's the ceremony, you're really nervous, there's all the fun things that happen at the reception, and I just don't think couples get a chance to like step away
Yeah.
and look at the room and be like, wow,
Yeah.
like we did this is something that we accomplished. So I always, when I was a photographer, I would make the bride and groom come to the back of the room or the front of the room or the side of the room and stand up on chairs
Yeah.
and like look out over the crowd and be like, this is our wedding day and these are all the people that we love in one space together. And that may never happen again in your life.
That's cute.
You know, grandparents pass away.
Yeah.
People come from all over the country, sometimes all over the world.
Yeah.
Like it's so special, and I see it all the time, to have everyone that loves you.
Yeah.
And obviously there's more people out in the world that love you, because sometimes that guest list can be a little hairy. But everyone that's important enough that you invite to your wedding day
Yeah.
in one space, all celebrating together,
You,
but
right.
also celebrating you and the love that you have found, which is so
Yeah.
special.
My favorite part of my wedding was our last dance, because that was like the first time that in like the whole crazy day of everything that we got to like just be us. Like there was nobody else out on the wedding dance floor. My brother-in-law came out and visited us, but he got kicked out. But besides that, like that was like the first time of the day that we had like everything else blocked out, which was kind of like a really special, cool moment. So like live in that 3 minutes.
Yeah,
Live in that 3
and I
minutes.
see it happen all the time.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting. Like the couples, you know, they worry so much about what everybody else thinks and how they're
Right.
feeling, that like when they do get to spend that quality time together, it's like, oh, this is really cool. Like we're surrounded by everyone, but
Yeah.
we just get to be us, which
So
is fun.
That's it. We did our first podcast.
First podcast in the books.
You do the outro. It's your podcast.
Well, thank you guys for coming and listening. And there's going to be a lot more of these with lots of other vendors. April and I will be your host, and we will hopefully guide you in learning some things. You'll get to know us a little better and figure out all our weird quirks, because we got a lot of them. And other than that, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Celebrate at 19 Hawthorne, the podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Join us next time.